Alright, something is wrong with the Sentra. Let's go ahead and show you. If I push the clutch all the way to the floor, if I try to go in gear, it actually starts moving the car. So, I'm going to shut the car off, put it in first gear. My foot all the way on the clutch. And as you can see, I don't have any clutch because down the street we go. Which also means that I gotta yank it out of gear when I want to stop. So, using this start method, I'm going to try to get this thing over to the barn so that we can figure out what's going on. Also, as you can see, I checked the basics. As you actuate the clutch pedal, the slave cylinder is moving. So, I'm guessing that the pressure plate itself maybe came loose and is just moving out of the way whenever I push on the fingers. Now it's kind of behaving. I just have no clutch, but for a little bit there, it was lurching really randomly. Like you could hold it in gear and it would stay still, and all of a sudden it felt like you dropped the clutch. I'm just gonna try to get this thing in the barn and get the trans off the back of the motor and see if I can figure out what's going on with this clutch. It has clutch pressure because it's holding itself on this slight hill. If I put this in neutral, it would roll into the street. So this is a very strange issue. As I was backing in here, out of habit, obviously, coming in towards the doors, I pushed my clutch in a little bit so that I was making sure I was lined up with the edges so I don't break another mirror off. And my clutch came back completely. And I did it a couple times. I could go to neutral and back to a gear. I don't know. I'm still going to have to look into what's going on here. I was able to, push the clutch in, go into gear, sitting still. We're going to see if it's doing the same thing. And if I can get up on these ramps, clutch in. See, I don't know, the clutch is, wait, no, second gear is a little stiff. Nope, see now, oh, it went back in, second. It's dragging clearly because I doesn't want to go into gear easily. But I can get into gear, I don't know. Let's get this thing up on these ramps. I was really worrying that whole time that the clutch was going to do what it did before, and all of a sudden the pedal would go out and the clutch would go full engagement, and then it would launch me over these ramps and have it sitting on the frame. The trans is off, the pressure plate and clutch disc are off, and everything was tight, and I noticed something was wrong. I'm going to give you about 5 seconds to see if you can see it. Yeah, there's a spring missing in my clutch disc. So if we take a look over here at the dual mass flywheel, that's exactly where it was. It's in the flywheel. And it's a little chewed up. The clutch disc shows a little bit of damage as well. Yeah, see, this thing's been all through here. So it's a good thing I didn't ignore this and not take it apart. Let's get that flywheel off. Look at that. Okay, so mystery solved. The spring was flying around in here. You can see it's polished up. This broke off somehow. I don't know why that happened, but I can't use this clutch disc now because this broke off. So this spring can now be freely put in and taken back out. I'm not going to try to take it out. I have to flip it over. There, see, it comes out. So what happened was, when I was sitting in the driveway, the reason I had the clutch pedal in and then the car took off and then kind of stopped and then took off even with the pedal in all the way was this spring came out of the clutch disc and lodged itself in these holes, which essentially, using this spring, locked the clutch disc to the flywheel, which in turn would spin the transmission, even if my foot was on the clutch, because even with the pressure plate disengaged, it's still mechanically locked clutch to flywheel, so it's gonna spin the transmission, and if I'm in gear, it's gonna move like it did. That's why it seemed like something in my clutch failed. Technically, it did. So that's why when I was sitting in the driveway in first gear with my foot on the clutch, sitting still, and all of a sudden the car took off and started driving at the house, and I couldn't stop it without turning the engine off. That's why. My clutch broke. So I have a couple stock springless clutches, which is what you're supposed to run with a dual mass. I just kept that clutch in anyway because that's what came with the flywheel. It was newer than all the others. I have some old Spec V clutches because I've taken apart or rebuilt blown up ones, 100 million times. So I'm going to throw one of those in and get this thing put back together. Everything else looks like it's fine. The pressure plate has no damage. The flywheel, it just kind of polished that surface up. There's got a little bit of play in it, but it's always been that way. I've just ignored it. So yeah, that's new for me. I've never seen a clutch disc do that, chuck a spring and lock itself together like that. Let's go back here to the Hard Angle Barn parts department. I ought to have a clutch in here somewhere. Spec V. Let's look here. Wait. No, that's an SR20 clutch. I ought to stick that I can't stick that flywheel back in now. I don't have a sprung clutch anymore. There's one. Voila. That's what I'm looking for right there. So you can see the stock Spec V clutch doesn't have springs in it because the dual mass does. That was just kind of unnecessary. It's just the clutch I got when I built the white one. So I at least won't have that failure again. Ooh, spare flywheel too. I just called that a flywheel. Pressure plate. Dummy. So there's proof that every once in a while it comes in handy being a hoarder. I guess the problem is that there's like 3 other Spec V clutches in here and I don't know where they are. So maybe that's the downside. Now here's an important thing to check. We're going to look at these shallow rivets here. We're going to look at the depth of how much of the clutch disc is actually left versus the new one, which is actually the old used one. I don't even remember which car this came out of. This might be the stock one for this car. We might actually have more life in this clutch than in the newer one. So this might not actually be a bad thing to change after all. So I haven't used any before, but on the flywheel bolts and the pressure plate bolts, I'm going to use some thread locker blue. I want to start doing track days with the Sentra this coming year, and the last thing I want is to have this thing get loose and start trying to fall off inside the bell housing at 5,000 RPM at a track like 2.5 hours away from the house. Picked up some oil so we can do an oil change on this thing tonight when I get home from work. Well, I hate to end the video right here. I wanted to bang some gears, show it's working right, but up here in the mountains, it's winter, it's really icy, and I don't want to get in a wreck. See if I can keep a clean hand. I already failed, it's dripping on me. Clean enough. Ugh, point it that way. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up this oil change. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope to see you in the next one, and I will talk to you all later.
just calling to say I